Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, December 13th, 2017. You can probably already tell how I'm doing this morning. I wasn't up late shouting for the victory of Doug Jones in the Alabama Senate contest, but, actually I was up late shouting at the thought of, which finally occurred to me as I began feeling the cold creeping on last night, shouting at the memory of sitting in a restaurant on Saturday being served a salad by a server who came to the table and said, "I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I think I have laryngitis," which only highlights the paid sick leave issue for us once again. I think that may be the issue. The salad came on time, and he wanted to know what kind of dressing I wanted. And I guess I should have asked for antibiotic dressing, but I didn't, and now I've got this, unless it's a virus. I don't know. Greg can tell me that. Thank God it's Wednesday, which means it's the day after Election Day, and we have lots to talk about, but the real thanks go to Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter, who can come on here and help relieve me of the burden of trying to carry the show with about half a voice. But there's plenty to talk about, of course, no doubt about that. And lots of tweeting to talk about this morning, too. Everybody is out there making excuses on the Republican side. The president he's not exactly rage tweeting, but he's not exactly taking the news lying down, although I suspect he actually is lying down. Now that I think about it, it's a terrible expression. He is lying down. He's certainly lying. We know that much. This morning, his anger has taken this form. Let's see. He has tweeted, I guess, twice this morning, once 3 hours ago, saying, I love this one. The reason I originally endorsed Luther Strange, and his numbers went up mightily, by the way. They didn't, actually. Is that I said Roy Moore will not be able to win the general election. I was right. See? How do you like that? Roy worked hard, but the deck was stacked against him down there in Alabama. It was stacked against the Republicans. There's an awful lot to unpack in that tweet, but a slightly more magnanimous tweet went out last night. I assume he was in bed and someone wrote this congratulatory message for him. But I don't know. Maybe he was feeling somewhat magnanimous at the time, figuring he would be going to bed pretty soon. He also spent time, by the way, tweeting at the TV he doesn't watch, complaining about, wow, more than 90% of fake news media coverage of me is negative, with numerous forced retractions and untrue stories, hence my use of social media. The only way to get the truth out, much of mainstream media, which he misspelled, mead, like the drink, mead, ia. He slipped an extra A in there, has become a joke. And he tags it with the @Fox and Friends, which of course means he was watching television and saw Fox and Friends discussing it, and he wanted them to know that he was watching. So he tweeted at them, which is the modern equivalent, of course, of yelling at the television. Only this time they can actually hear you, which I think is an improvement. But of course, he spent the earlier part of the week insisting that he didn't watch television, but he tweets at it nonetheless. I don't know. I mean, it's not the most consequential lie he's told, but it's as bald-faced as any of them, and you should keep that and his denials of playing golf in mind when you find yourself shocked that he has denied something, or you are not yet shocked, or perhaps you're shocked at the media not yet being shocked at another one of his lies that hasn't yet been proven to be a lie, but you should assume is a lie. And, man, we got a lot of work to do with this guy. It's been really interesting watching what's going on. I saw Chuck Todd tweeting last night with the note that it's not easy to go 0-2 in the same race with two different candidates, but he has managed to do it, backing Luther Strange in the primary and losing, and then backing Roy Moore in the general and losing. And of course, huge, I don't know what, a huge knife in the back, I guess, for Steve Bannon, who made Roy Moore his candidate and his cause célèbre, and went down in flames. He, too, of course, tweeting excuses. I think, I don't know whether he's tweeting them or he's giving them out in interviews. He insists that Roy Moore wasn't his first choice either. And he was really for Mo Brooks, and if people had listened to him, but huge blow to his reputation as a political strategist and political genius of world historical significance. He never was that. He's never, as you know from listening to the show, has never accomplished anything that the Mercers haven't bought for him. But, you know, he's out there claiming he's a political genius, and he had his ass handed to him last night, and I'm glad to see it. As I mentioned also this morning, Alabama Senate Twitter this morning, a glorious mix of thank yous to black women for turning out and saving all our asses by electing Doug Jones rather than the pedophile Roy Moore to the Senate, but also a great mix of black women and black men and some others as well, by the way, picking up on the message saying, look, we're not here to save you. We're not here for you. We did this ourselves. There was a race in our state between a vicious, racist, Klan sympathizing, backwards ass cracker moron and pedophile. And this was all in one candidate. Not to say that the other candidates on the Republican side didn't have some mix of that in them, versus a Democrat who was, by all accounts, a decent guy and a great prosecutor. And we owe him a debt of gratitude for prosecuting the Klan folks to some extent. But, he wasn't the most exciting candidate in the world for the black community. And there was some worry about whether he was making inroads in the black community, doing enough outreach, whether he was exciting them or not. And, there was definitely some work to do. And from what I'm seeing in my biased Twitter feed, it seems like the NAACP and others did a fantastic job in doing get out the vote efforts and said, he may not be the most exciting guy in the world, but he's running against a vicious racist, and there's an actual chance here, due to circumstances, perhaps beyond our control, that makes it possible to pick up a seat here. Don't neglect the opportunity to do this. And they didn't. And so I'm glad that they didn't. And lots of great observations out there, too, about, well, maybe rich millionaire donor class Democratic money should be spent on that instead. Lots of efforts at suppressing the black vote in Alabama. And when there's considerable effort put into making sure that they turn out nonetheless and that they're prepared to fight if people try to turn them away, they can make a huge difference. And, well, they did. And so I'm glad that they were open to the message. I'm glad that there was plenty in it for them so that they would feel motivated to do this thing, which has the ancillary benefit of helping all the rest of us. It's a complex issue. It's got lots of nuance. That's what makes it great for a show like this one. There's no simple answer, but one of the things you may want to take away from the day's results is, money spent making sure that the black vote is informed. And when they're informed, they're motivated to show up because, if you give people information that makes sense, they know what to do. They don't need any kind of engraved invitation, and they have reasons to show up that are valuable entirely to themselves. And they're not above or I guess not beneath helping out everybody else too. It's a great thing when everybody benefits. So sure. But primarily I live here. I'm black. I live in Alabama. It would be better if we didn't have a vicious racist in the Senate. And that was an easy message for them to absorb. Greg Dworkin is here, probably with all the faculties of his voice. Good morning, Greg.
How are you doing? Good morning.
Hi.
Hi. So I have to tell you, anybody who had been paying attention to our show and listening, especially
missed it.
yesterday when we rounded up the polls and did the make your own adventure polls so that you could choose, depending upon who showed up, how the outcome was going to be. You should be shocked but not surprised.
Yes,
When we said that there are decent people in Alabama and that they will vote either for Doug Jones or against Roy Moore or stay home. They have to get credit for staying home. This happened. And I think that people, and I know it makes you uncomfortable, but it made them uncomfortable. Nobody likes the ick factor of actually having to think about a child molester in the U.S. Senate. And so the political people could say, yeah, but it's Alabama and it has a lean and, you know, it's mostly Republican. The ick factor for parents was unbelievable. And just to, make that point, the one statistic that jumped out at me right away, women with children under 18 at home went for Doug Jones 66-32.
All right.
Right? If you have a kid at home and you had to think about Roy Moore babysitting your kid, I can't do it.
Please don't.
Right? So a lot of stuff happened yesterday. A lot of information happened yesterday. But let's talk about the black vote because it's huge and very important.
Yes.
Right? And one thing, just as we got a little sick and tired of the what Ralph Northam is doing wrong takes.
Yes.
Just about every reporter who pointed out unenthusiastic black votes in Alabama, because I talked to somebody, was wrong.
Yeah. Well,
Completely wrong.
I'm sure they
totally
conveyed the
wrong.
sentiments.
We had people who showed up.
Yeah.
That showed up in basically Barack Obama numbers, and when they voted, black men voted for Doug Jones 93%, and black women 98%. 98% of black women voted for Doug Jones. That's astounding. And black women were 17% of the voters. Black men were 11%. That's 28. And that's a lot higher than people expected. The idea was Doug Jones has to hit 25% or more to have a chance. He hit 28. So, I mean, what's your definition of enthusiasm? I wasn't effusive enough when I talked to some white guy from Connecticut that I'm not really familiar with? I mean, what are we talking about here?
Well, that's true. I mean, it's hard to measure. I think the reporters accurately portrayed the sentiments they heard. They just didn't understand what they were hearing because, I don't know, it's not like people were hiding the ball, but you ask people, what do you think of this Doug Jones? I mean, who pulls out like a trumpet and gives plays a flourish for dun, da, 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 Doug Jones? I can't wait.
Right. So they get a lot of credit. So do the suburban women especially, but suburbanites who voted more for Jones than they would have, for example, for Romney. Steve Schmidt described it as the coalition of the decent. It's powerful, strong, and everywhere in the country. Trumpism and Bannonism will wind up on the ash heap of history. 2018 is upon us, and it will be a momentous year. Paul Ryan and Mitch should start collecting moving boxes.
Well, that would be nice.
Right?
We'll see about that. Bannonism, by the way, Steve Bannon denies that there is such a thing and insists there is only Trumpism. There is no Dana, only Zool.
Well, President Bannon has a lot to say about this. Message tonight to every GOP member in Congress, says Chris Hayes. If you think the president's hold on your base will save you, think again.
Yeah.
And Cecile Richards from Planned Parenthood said, tonight voters in Alabama did something Republican leaders have actively avoided, holding a sexual predator accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, Roy Moore hasn't conceded.
Oh, right.
Not that he has a choice. He can't ask for a recount.
Whereas
that's not how it works. It's got to be 0.5% less, and he didn't. So Rick Hasen pointed out that he doesn't really have a choice about that. Mason Steinberg points out Roy Moore hasn't accepted the outcome of the Civil War. What makes anybody think of it except losing to Doug Jones?
Right. I can't think of any reason. There's no monuments to it, though.
Right. The Birmingham News headline, Alabama rejects Moore, elects Democrat Jones, but even better is the New York Daily News. Screw you and the horse you rode in on.
Yeah. That was a good one. He set himself up for a lot of things, including the interview with a 12-year-old girl. That didn't help him.
I mean, ridiculous stuff, So let me just read you a little bit about what I said.
Okay.
Because It's my segment. And
Yeah,
I get to tell you what
I'll
I
rest.
said this morning. This is on the Pundit Roundup.
Okay.
So, good morning. The good guy won. Atticus Finch won his election. President Bannon loses. I guess you should have gone to the University of Alabama after all.
Yes.
Remember, at his rally, he was berating Joe Scarborough. Bannon said, I went to Harvard. You only went to the University of Alabama. I remind you, this was in Alabama.
Did he
How
actually
smart was that?
say out
Yes,
loud
he
that?
did. Yes, he said that.
I thought he might have said, well, if you were so smart, you would have gone to Harvard. And people intuited, but what?
No, I don't
That's
know
just
if
like
he added,
flat
you
out
only
duh.
went to the University of Alabama. But,
Wow.
it made it clear. So Scarborough
Yes.
tweeted back, by the
Well,
way, the
did
only reason
anybody
you went
know?
to Harvard is you didn't get into Alabama.
Okay, a good alma mater.
Right? The pedophile
joke.
lost. Actually, he's a hebephile, but whatever. And besides, he's Hebrew phobic anyway.
Yes.
America wins, and bless the white Republicans who stayed home. This was a big part of what happened here. Steve Kornacki was doing numbers yesterday on MSNBC suggesting that compared to 2016, the turnout in the Democratic areas, including the Black Belt, which is a section of Alabama blessed with fertile soil, and because of that, that's where the plantations were. And because of that, a lot of black people live there. They showed up 75%.
Oh, did they move in for the farms?
Yeah, they
For the
moved in.
farmland? Is that what it was? I know.
Right,
They were saving
they
up
got
to
an
buy
offer they
houses there.
couldn't refuse, and they moved in.
Man.
But they turned out 75%, and the rural areas turned out 55% relative to 2016.
Yeah. Well, oh, by the way, Roy Moore's comments, I'm sure it didn't help any, at the last minute to say, what was great? Slavery.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that didn't help anyway.
But, they didn't
But
even
that,
need to
that
hear
was
that.
huge.
It was already done.
And Jones ran a great race. He just ran a terrific race. And I remind all of our listeners, some of whom go back a long ways with you and I in Daily Kos, if you're a Deniac, his best spiritual advisor there was Joe Trippi.
I did not know that.
So Trippi was advising him about campaign commercials and exactly how to approach this. He wasn't the campaign manager, but I think he was the strategist.
He was the getting paid guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the pro tip here, for Democrats who want to replicate this race everywhere, don't hesitate to run a pro-choice candidate when you're running against the child molester.
Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of discussion about that last night and this morning, making a big deal out of that and saying, for others who would otherwise have advised, you got to tack right in order to try and capture some of the Republican-leaning vote here. Well, not necessarily when you're running against a child molester, but maybe never. I don't know. It's something to ponder, that's for sure.
Well, something else to ponder is something I've talked about on the show, and that is the play for the suburbs worked.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, forget about the, quote, white working class economic anxiety voter,
Yes.
which is to say you're totally racist. I'm not going to vote for Barack Obama because he's from Kenya kind of voter. But there's others. And there's nothing wrong with talking to them. Ignore the deplorables. Talk to the reasonable Republicans. They are there. And a lot of them wound up voting for Doug Jones. Now, as a group, they voted more for Roy Moore than for Doug Jones, but enough of a difference between how they did Romney. And I keep saying Romney because Alabama didn't have exit polls in 2016, so we don't really know what happened there. But compared to 2012, a lot of those voters voted for Doug Jones. And so to them, I say thank you. And to the ones who couldn't vote for Doug Jones but couldn't vote for Roy Moore and therefore stayed home, thank you, too.
Yeah. Why didn't they do exit polls in 2016 in Alabama? Was it just like,
it was a done deal?
Yeah,
Who cares?
okay. I wondered
no,
about
come on.
that. Well, maybe they're going to have to start doing it
Nobody's going to
again.
spend the money. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting, because let's go into Bernie would have won territory here. You were talking about that because you mentioned Mo Brooks.
Yeah.
And let's be real. If Mo Brooks
won.
had been the candidate, he would have won and Doug Jones would have lost.
Yes. Well, I mean, had Kayla Moore been the candidate, they probably would have won.
I don't know. Kayla Moore.
She's not a pedophile.
There's a piece in Vanity Fair here entitled "Bannon, a Brothel, and a Jew Lawyer. Roy Moore's final disastrous rally reads like a bad joke."
It does.
I'm not sure Kayla Moore would win. So the whole thing here is that, you got to pick your candidates. My feeling is that in Alabama, Doug Jones was the perfect candidate. I don't know that you can run anybody at any time. However, there's a lot of stuff that Ron Brownstein has picked up here. For example, he writes, file away for 2018, per Alabama exit polls, 93% of voters who disapprove of Trump voted Democratic.
Aha. Yes.
And in the Virginia governor, it was 87%, in Jersey 82%. Next year, Republicans will be defending a lot of places where Trump approval won't be as high as Alabama, which, by the way, was only 48%.
Okay.
Trump is toxic. I mean, I don't know how it's, oh, well, he's Teflon, nothing touches him, nothing matters. Look at these numbers. That is just so wrong.
That's a good point.
Here's another.
Yeah.
With college and white women relatively shifting away from GOP under Trump, it's a relative shift. Even in Alabama, you have to ask yourself, if you're a Republican, if you're on the verge of losing a critical part of the Republican coalition, that's why Steve Schmidt told the congressional leaders to pack your bags. And by the way, why they want to hurry that up and make it sooner by passing this ridiculous tax bill that everybody hates, I don't know.
Yeah.
Charlie Sykes adds, hard to overstate how stunning this is or what a ghastly defeat it is for Trump, Bannon, and MAGA world.
Yes.
I don't think it's sunk in. I think the earthquake is so big that it just hasn't sunk in. Al Weaver, who reports for DC Examiner, covering Congress, says, source close to the RNC tells me folks there are furious with Ronna McDaniel. Remember, it's not Ronna Romney McDaniel anymore because she changed her name because Trump insisted. Are furious with Ronna McDaniel over their move to jump back in the race for more. Here's a quote. Congratulations on dropping the Romney name and picking up a pedophile. Proud day for the RNC. Mm-hmm. I'm relaying this because that doesn't win elections. But I'm telling you now, the knives, the long knives, the knives in the back are out for Bannon today.
Yeah, good. I like that.
Yeah, I don't mind if the Nazi gets stuck a few times there. I did ask Merriam-Webster, the Twitter feed, if they have an entry for hebephilia. I'd like to see what it is if they do.
Oh.
Because that's really what Moore is. He's a hebephilic. He's not a pedophile, but,
now that it's
everybody's going to call him that, and
that.
that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. In an election like that, well, you might as well get straight to the point. And if you're explaining, you're losing, right? So if we're out there,
that's what I'm saying. Of hebephile.
Okay, exactly, but for next time, we'll be ready.
Did you see the Joshua Green piece about to revive Moore's campaign? Bannon emulated the Nazi and Soviet propagandist filmmakers he admires, building a counter-narrative to evoke paranoia and anger. And it was the whole thing about they're coming in from outside the state to try to get us, you and me.
I did not.
This was back on December 11th. Let me send you that tweet because it's linked to a story. I think it over-glamorizes, dramatically suggests success for Bannon in this, when in fact it was a failure. And, that goes along with the whole myth about Bannon being a great strategical genius when actually he's a jerk. I mean, what does it take to go in and lose a Republican race in Alabama?
Well, you almost have to be trying.
Now, let me tell you about a great column. And this one is AL.com, Alabama.com.
Well, good job, Alabama.
Right, from John Archibald. There'll be endless talks of politics tomorrow and the next day and the next about winners and losers, how Doug Jones did it. Some will be obsessed with what he means for the Senate, tax reform, the Supreme Court, abortion rights, and the state of politics in Alabama and the state of Alabamians. Important stuff. That's not really what I care about today. It's not the message I hear today because for the last 4 weeks, he says, writing from Alabama, I've talked to women who bared their souls to me, who sees this Me Too movement in America as a catalyst for change, who sees this awakening to talk of things they've long held close. Not the Roy Moore accusers, not them, but women who say they were abused by fathers and brothers and wanted nothing more than for somebody to know, because opening up was like a relief valve that kept them from bursting. Some talked about being wooed by men in authority when they were but girls, and how they came to regret relationships that shamed them and scarred them and affected how they would forever regard the opposite gender. Others spoke of pawing and groping, and a few told of out-and-out rape. Rape. They looked on this moment in America and Alabama as a time when they could open themselves up, when they could muster strength to show their weakness, when they could finally be believed, Most, by the way, were not interested in naming names of those who did them wrong. They were not obsessed with vengeance or retribution or notoriety. They just wanted to stop hurting. It's a great column.
Yes.
And he says it's a powerful statement about the way Jones supporters worked and a powerful statement about the trepidation Alabamians have about Moore. It was the David and Goliath shot. Even that is not the real message here. On this day, Alabama stood for victims. It stood for women. It stood for compassion, because the way Alabama treated the women who accused Roy Moore of improprieties could have been a message to all who have been abused, to all who someday will be. Roy Moore and his supporters called them liars and whiners, and I would add worse. And some Alabamians joined in the disdain, calling them sluts and worse, insisting it was once the Alabama way to find mates too young to drive, and that once upon a time groping was an acceptable act. But Alabama, against the odds and conventional wisdom, stood up and rejected that behavior. It didn't condone the silence. It didn't excuse the sin when nobody thought it would. That's the message Alabama sent yesterday, not about politics or fear or loathing or habit or even Donald Trump. It said a message to women. This has not been a safe place, and it can be. It can, and this is a start. It's a great column. I think he hit the nail on the head. I think this is what motivated those voters who would normally vote Republican but didn't vote for Roy Moore. I said all along I thought that was underestimated. I wasn't predicting a Jones win. I don't think anybody could have done that. But that's why we're shocked, because it's a political earthquake, but not surprised. All the makings were there.
Yes.
We talked about it. We went over it. It's not a surprise to your listeners.
It can't be at this point, and we modeled everything, or at least we read somebody else who modeled everything for them.
That we did. Yeah, we're really good at reading other people who do the work.
Well, that's our job. We read
that
these
is our
things
job.
out loud. Okay. Well, another of our jobs is to stay on top of the breaks, one of which is coming up right here, right now. But yeah, excellent. I like that article. That gives a great deal of insight into what's happening and what you can expect to see happening in other states. Because, this happens everywhere.
There's women everywhere, I hear.
Yeah, right. And a lot of them have the same feelings because a lot of the same things have happened to them. I wonder how long this will play out for. I hope it keeps rolling like we will after this next break. Good morning and welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. That seemed like a really long time waiting for the clock to come around to this one, but trying to rest my voice as much as possible during the break. Greg Dworkin's still here with us, thankfully, helped carry the show for a little while longer. We had some interesting discussion, though, about how we would approach this next segment, so I'll just hand it over. How about that?
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank especially Mark Blumenthal, mystery pollster, who does the Survey Monkey polling, and Patrick Murray from Monmouth Poll. They were the ones that put together the Make Your Own Adventure polling, where we covered yesterday. Depending upon who turned out, you could model how this election was going to shape out. So they really helped to prepare all of this. Here's a really interesting piece. I have just the tweet. I haven't read the whole piece yet, but just it struck me. It's from ChristianityToday.com. Yes. And the biggest loser in the Alabama election, says the headline, is not Republicans or Democrats, but Christian Witness. The editor of Christianity Today, no matter who wins in Alabama, there's already one loser, Christian faith. No one will believe a word we say, perhaps for a generation.
Okay.
This is what happens when you have Franklin Graham and other so-called Christian leaders endorse a pedophile and a sexual predator like Donald Trump. Why would anybody believe him?
I don't know. That's a good question.
And if you're interested in following this in detail, I can understand if you don't want to. There's a hashtag Empty the Pews that was started by Christopher Stroop, who talks about ex-evangelicals who have left because of the gaslighting and some of the other mental abuse you take for being forced to sit in a very authoritarian worldview that condones stuff like that if it's their own leaders.
Yeah.
So there's a whole big subculture here that we are not tied into, that this is playing out in. And so in that sense, the Roy Moore loss is going to be another big earthquake. God's will and all that.
Yeah, well, that's true, and I guess is tied to. There are others who feel the same way, not because they were evangelical and feel betrayed, but who feel betrayed by their own authoritarian leaders. Everyone waking up to the reality of, the pressure was on to toe the party line, and a lot of us endorsed a pedophile and didn't get a Senate seat out of it. We are not looking good this morning. Not us, them.
Right. And here's a weird stat that Chris Nicholson tweets. Alabama was R+5 last night. If you ask who would you rather see the U.S. Senate controlled by, the Democratic Party 45 and the Republican Party 50.
Yes.
I mean, that is such a narrow margin in a ruby red state like Alabama. It's insane.
Well, yes.
And enough defected from that to give Jones the seat. But Alabama only being R+5 is crazy. And just tells you what Amy Walter also tweeted yesterday. We're looking at a wave, guys. It's right there in front of your nose.
I would guess so.
In that regard, let me, of all people, Ari Fleischer has the honor of having one of the best and one of the worst tweets.
Oh, in the same,
which one do you want first? The dumbest or the good one?
I was worried that it was the same tweet, but
no, two different ones.
We'll start with the good one.
The good one, okay. Establishment candidate Ed Gillespie lost. Non-establishment candidate Roy Moore lost. The lesson: a base-only POTUS isn't enough for the GOP to win. The Democrats hate Trump more than Republicans love him. The POTUS needs to increase his approval rating, or D turnout will kill ours in 2018.
Okay. Ours, the
Republicans.
Okay, not OURS, but
our
same thing.
pirates. He's talking about pirates.
That could be it. Kill the R's.
Kill the R's. R.
I never know when it's pirate day.
Have some grog. R. Yeah. No, he's talking about Republicans.
Doesn't matter. Okay. All right. And so, Ari Fleischer, you say?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just keeping track.
You remember Ari Fleischer?
Yeah.
The liar from the Bush administration.
Right. The one before they had this liar.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. His dumbest tweet, which has to be the dumbest tweet of the night.
Oh boy.
Which was, if the Democrats don't win Alabama, think about how weak they are. A candidate who can't beat somebody accused of child molestation. So extreme on abortion, they're out of the mainstream. Liberalism is a killer for Democrats. Matthew Dowd added, Ari, stick to PR. A close win by Moore is a disaster for the GOP in deep red Alabama.
Well, that is true. That is awfully dumb. I mean, I see the spin he's trying to get out of it. If he had shortened that tweet and just stopped.
But not good.
Oh,
Here's other good tweets from last night, because basically what I did this morning for the Pundit Roundup is I was rounding up good tweets in real time because it gives you a sense of what's going on last night. Yeah. Tony Schwartz, who I think is the guy who helped co-write the Trump biography.
I believe so.
Donald Trump, you won Alabama by 28% a year ago. Kiss your presidency goodbye.
Don't kiss anything.
Right? And then next best tweet was from John Kerry.
Oh.
Well, Karen Tumulty from the Washington Post tweeted, early exit polls showed John Kerry in the lead. And Kerry tweeted back, too soon, Karen, too soon.
Okay. I was afraid, like, oh, my God, John Kerry has a tweet in here. It's, well, many people were saying,
that was actually
dry this out. Good job. All right. Brevity.
Right. Harry Anton, echoing a point that we made here. All these anecdotal reports of low black turnout from reporters turned out to be trash based on these returns. Black voters are turning out. And Evan Siegfried, who is a Republican strategist based in New York City, worked for Rudy Giuliani when Rudy was sane before he went insane. Steve Bannon excels at helping Democrats win seats they shouldn't, and he cites 2010 Angle and O'Donnell, 2012 Murdoch and Aiken, and 2017 Moore. Apparently Bannon was involved in all of those at some level.
Oh, I didn't know
Loser.
Yeah, I did see somebody put together a list that included all of those guys. Also, Buck in Colorado, and figuring that
Buck,
with those
Cuccinelli.
6, they could be looking at. They could have been sitting there with a. I didn't even think about Cuccinelli, but they could have been sitting there with a 57-43 Senate and nearing us that 60-vote supermajority.
Who was the nutty lieutenant governor from Virginia?
I remember his initials now.
You know.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. And now, when people ask me things like that, I blank out.
Yeah, but you know who I'm talking about. I mean,
Yes, I
there's some
do.
really nutty politicians in Virginia, but it looks like they're losing more than they're winning these days.
Yes.
The
it does.
macaca days from, are gone.
Right.
Northern
Well,
Virginia has too
that's-
many people.
I hope that continues to be the case.
So, Ronald Brownstein, attention suburban House R, something is happening in the Trump era per exit. Jones is winning 46% of college and white women versus 22% for Obama in 2012, and 36% of college plus white men, college plus white women, meaning the college educated or graduate school white women, and 36% of college plus white men versus 19% for Obama. It's still low overall, but consistent with a big Dem gain with those voters in New Jersey and Virginia. And the same model as Virginia, strong African-American turnout, huge margin among young solid shift to D's among college and suburban whites. That overcomes preponderant GOPs among blue-collar, evangelical, and rural whites. That's a trade-off Trump is accelerating for the GOP, and Bannon wants to push it even further. So for all those who said, let's just go to our base, that's the strong AA turnout, huge margin among the young, they are voting. Millennials are soon going to overcome and outnumber boomers as the largest voting bloc, people who actually show up and vote. And solid shift to D's among college plus suburban whites is the part I'm talking about. The 10% of Republicans can be peeled off, well worth doing. When you put that coalition together, you win.
Coalition of the Decent there.
Yes, exactly right.
E.W. Jackson is who you were thinking of, I think.
Yes, thank you.
I had the
Ew,
E.W. and
Jackson.
I was like,
That's
E.W.,
exactly right.
E.F. Hutton. I don't remember.
Yeah. Ew, Jackson. Preet Bahara says, is somebody sending Roy Moore a menorah delivered on horseback? Somebody should.
What? Okay.
And I said, yes, his Jewish lawyer.
Yeah, right. His Jewish lawyer spoke out yesterday and said, one of my clients is a loser. So
Yeah, well, they never
Yeah,
asked
at
the
least
Jewish
that-
banker, did they?
No.
Huh? Kayla Moore never really went there, but, she almost did,
Yeah, but they probably don't have. They keep their money in their mattress.
right? Stuart Stevens, who was a Romney advisor. Black voters in Alabama have a way of making history. And then finally, let me give you this from Harry Enton. Yes, he said, Alabama senator is a bit of an outlier, but this table tells the story. This is a terrible national environment for the GOP. I don't know if I sent this one to you, but I'll put it right at the bottom so you can find it easy in any case. And here it is, how special elections have shifted so far this year. California 34, plus 18 Democrat. Kansas 4, plus 23. Montana at large, 15. They always do, MT-AL. They mean at large delegate.
Yes,
But I'm always thinking that this is like the Alabama part of Montana,
they have one.
right?
Yes,
It's like the
at
Alabama part
large.
of Pennsylvania.
When you have one
The Pennsylvania
seat
part?
only, you are at large. Okay.
Yeah. Montana at large, plus 15 Democrat. Georgia 6, that's Ossoff's district, was plus 6
Yeah.
Democrat. South Carolina 5 was plus 16. Utah 3 was 3.
Just says 3.
And Alabama Senate was plus 31. Average plus 16.
Pretty good. So that's a 16-point handicap for Trump's party, wherever they
Now,
were. Okay.
is that unrealistic to look at? The generic ballot is like 13, plus 13 in the latest Monmouth poll, and it was plus 15, I think, in the Quinnipiac poll. So, there are polls that are saying that that's what this is looking at, and that's why Amy Walter is saying this is a wave. It's right in front of your nose if you would only look at the data.
Yes, if only the elections were held today also.
Right. Meaning that the Democratic lead may double by the time
It
we
could.
finish the way these guys are going. You're right to say that if it were held now, because things can change. But don't forget, things can get worse for the Republicans.
That's true. Donald Trump is their president, and he listens to Steve Bannon.
Exactly right. All right, so Harry Anthony adds, I don't want to say Alabama's a red state, but prior to Jones, the last Democrat to win a statewide race is dead.
Is he?
Yeah, the last person to win a major statewide race went to prison for 7 years and is now
yes.
out. And the last Dem to win a Senate seat has been a Republican for 23 years. That would be Shelby,
That
I
is true.
guess.
Yes. I mean, they have done it, but okay. Still.
So, yeah, it's a hard state to win in, and guess what? We just did.
Yeah. And I did see that they're already after, just crossing their fingers and hoping for some good news. Republicans in the Senate were recruiting Jones. Oh, now that you've won election, that's great. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Maybe
Cory
you want to
Gardner
become a Republican.
Yeah. Right, was saying, why don't you just vote with us, because that's what Alabama wants you to do.
Sure. That's why.
Yeah, he's just going to abandon the voters that just voted for him. That ain't happening. On the other hand, I'll tell you what is happening. This is from Manu Raju, who is from CNN, tweet this morning. Peter King from Long Island.
Yes, okay.
GOP Representative Pete King, not Steve King from Iowa, but Peter King from Rhode Island,
not
Long
Peter
Island.
King from Sports
not Staten
Illustrated
Island, not
either.
Rhode Island, but Long Island.
Right.
GOP Representative Peter King says Bannon needs to leave politics. He looks like some disheveled drunk who wandered onto the national stage.
Pete sometimes does tell it like it is.
He does, with a New York accent. All right, so that's basically the story, and that's my summary for today. It is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, good, okay.
So I just have to add, I think that Doug Jones was nimble. He showed some finesse-manship. He managed to keep the black vote while peeling off white suburban vote in Alabama and melding them together into a coalition of the decent, as you point out. And it worked, and here we are, and it's a great morning. This is like the first time in like 5 years I've really, really enjoyed an election morning.
All right. Well, that's good.
Next morning.
I'm glad that you can do that. What was by the way, before we let you go, the final numbers did we get? Did they finally do exit polling on this one? What kind of white membership is there in the coalition of the decent after all? Out of every 10 white Alabamians, how many of them could be expected to have done the right thing last night?
Well, let's look at it by race. And so, white men, who were 35% of the electorate, the largest part of the electorate,
Yes.
white men. The women were bigger, but that's because black women. White men, 35% of voters, 27% Jones, and 72% Moore.
Okay. Well, still almost 3 out of every 10 you bump into said, yeah, I'm not going. I'm not down for that. Thanks.
Right. Gender gap, white women, 31% of the electorate, 35% Jones, and 63% Moore. Again, this is Alabama, so those turn out to be relatively good numbers. And then, of course, black men were 11%, and they went 93% for Jones, and black women were 17%, and they went 98%. So if you're going to look at women voted for Jones, but that's because black women voted for Jones.
Yes, okay.
To say women voted for Jones is a way of hiding the fact that it was black women who were doing all the work, and so we're not going to do it that way.
All right. I can appreciate that. All right. Well, in case you're in Alabama for whatever reason, there is some chance that you could get a high five for the Jones win from one or two white people too. And I guess
the fact is, white women, 35% of them did vote for Jones, and good for them.
Yeah.
And I can't do it on the radio because you can't see, but there's this wonderful tweet that I was sending around this morning of an Alabama bar with everybody just exploding in cheers. I'll send it to you just so you have it.
All right.
Exploding in cheers when Doug Jones won.
Yeah. The bar's not named Cheers, by the way.
I know, but
I mean, people.
You could play the video and hear the noise if you want, or just very short, or just just watch everybody cheering. But these are happy people.
I guess
in Alabama over a Doug Jones win, and a lot of them are white.
Yeah. Okay. That's worth doing. I wonder if I can grab that video and just play the noise.
You see where I stuck it?
Yeah, I got it on my other on the other computer. Now I just got to find it on this one. Okay, well, I'll grab it, and we'll play the noise maybe on a continuous loop for the rest of the show.
You could do that instead of the music they play at break.
Right. Just
everybody cheering for Doug Jones' win.
It's in here somewhere.
And with that, I will take my leave. This is Wednesday.
Whoa!
There it is.
Loud. That was they weren't cheering for you leaving, but that was the explosive.
Yes, they were.
I'll work on the noise level there. There we go. Okay, thank you, Greg.
Yeah, that's how Alabama feels about Doug Jones winning.
Thanks for coming by and for carrying the show for this long. It was a tough morning for me, but at least we had lots to celebrate, as did the people in the bar here.
Right, and I will see you back on sometime.
All right. Yes, great. Thanks very much. We'll see you. I guess we're on to, Thursday, right? We're going to be okay for that.
Yeah, I'm not here tomorrow. I've actually got some training to do.
I see.
They're teaching me how to use a new electronic medical record.
Oh, and
ask me how happy I am. I would so much rather be.
It sounded really good.
But,
you sounded like, were you going to come out for Doug Jones? Yeah, I will.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, take care. Talk to you.
Okay, thanks. Very good. We'll see you next week then. And if you've got an appointment, he'll be keeping your medical records on this fantastic new system. All right. Well, anyway, yeah, let's play a little bit more of that celebration noise in the background. I had to turn. This is down at like 10% volume, by the way. They're really going crazy. You know, when I just hit the unmute button on it last time, it probably blew everybody's ears out. It certainly damaged my own hearing. By the way, a very mixed crowd in terms of racial composition in this bar. So, something to note. And it's nice to hear the excited sounds being, shared there. All right. Well, plenty of other things going on. I know that's the big story of the morning, and it certainly deserves to be the big story of the morning and of the year for that matter. But there are other things, and I'd like to occupy some of our time with some of these other stories, which will, I think, become an important part of our weekly mix here before we hear from Joan McCarter. And, it'll be up to her whether, I'm sure she'll want to celebrate the Doug Jones victory for some time. And if it was for the rest of the show, that would be fantastic. I have no problem with that. But we may need to address a few other items as well happening in Congress and the nearby environs. But one of the things that's happening nearby Congress, I guess, not exactly it's not a legislative issue, but this is an interesting story. And you no doubt have seen this one circulated by now on Twitter. I have at least two, I think, stories on this one. Let's see. Where's the other of the two? I had, I think, one from The Hill, and now I have a morning filing from Axios on this. It looks like the Axios was because they had until the morning, was perhaps the more thorough of the pieces, though they may have updated. It looks like they updated this piece from The Hill, too. Well, let's go to the Axios. I'm not wild about either of our sources on this one, but you probably heard about this one. And Mike, it was so interesting that even Mike Allen himself had to pick this one up for Axios. Schumer calls cops after forged sex scandal charge. This is rather amazing. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, of New York, of course, said he was the victim of a fake news hit on Tuesday and has turned over to Capitol Police a document that purports to detail lurid sexual harassment accusations by a former staffer. Maybe I'll turn back to Axios for their particular, somewhat unique take on things as they break up stories into why it matters and what you need to know, et cetera, et cetera. And in a more traditional narrative sense, we'll take a look at the Hill's piece here. Schumer was victim of fake sexual harassment allegations. Jacqueline Thompson, writing for The Hill. You already get the gist, of course. Axios reported Tuesday that the publication had obtained a document that included sexual harassment accusations against Schumer by a former female staffer. The 13-page document appeared to look like a lawsuit. That appeared to look like. That's not the best construction in the world, but basically it was forged such that it would, so that it would look like a lawsuit. Was put in a lawsuit format, and actually that was part of its undoing. It was forged and made to look like a lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court, but it lacked information that would have normally been included in a document like that, like the name of the lawyer for the former staffer who is making the allegations. And that was missing, curiously enough, because then you would, if you were a reporter, you would then call that lawyer and say, give me some comment for our story. And that would have given up the game a little too quickly. The woman mentioned in the document, because that's who they would call in the absence of an attorney being listed, the woman mentioned in the document said, because they called her and asked her, that she didn't write the document, her signature on the document is forged, and that none of the allegations are true. The claims in this document are completely false. My signature is forged, and even basic facts about me are wrong, she told Axios in a statement. Now, normally you have the accused stands there and says, no, all of this is crazy, it's a forgery, or it's not, none of this stuff happened. It's usually not the plaintiff, the alleged plaintiff, we now have to say, who is in the business of denying those claims. The woman, though, did work in Senator Schumer's office from 2009 to 2012 and now works elsewhere in the federal government. Schumer's office said they turned over the document to Capitol Police for investigation. The document is a forged document and every allegation is false. We've turned it over to the Capitol Police and asked them to investigate and pursue criminal charges because it's clear the law has been broken, Schumer's spokesman Matt House told Axios. We believe the individual responsible for forging the document should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law to prevent other malicious actors from doing the same. He said, clearly somebody who got the idea that, well, if Al Franken ends up having to resign or is forced to say he's going to resign based on these allegations being made, then why don't we just make some more against some other people? And they went straight to the top and decided to try it against the minority leader in the Senate, probably as these sorts of dirty tricks go, they should have been aiming elsewhere, and probably would be a good idea, for instance, to say, let's set the bar a little bit lower. Let's try it with a Democratic senator, if there are any, from states with Republican governors where a Republican could name the replacement if we successfully drove this person to resign. But I don't know. I guess they thought they'd go for all the marbles all at once. Even though, I mean, honestly, I guess if you manage to get Schumer trapped in this somehow, I don't really know what you think you were going to get by way of replacement, but maybe it would just be the value of the scalp, I guess. So they went for the biggest possible prize, and they did a poor job of it. So let's see. Continuing on with the Hills report here, the female staffer said reports from other publications, including CNN, The Washington Post, and BuzzFeed, also asked her about or had also asked about the document. Here is a tweet embedded from Kate Nocera. We saw this document. It had obvious red flags, including a reference to House Rule 23 and striking similarities to a document filed against Conyers, John Conyers, in court. And they include a link to the document. And, of course, that would be a red flag. If you were alleging abuse between 2009 and 2012 by Chuck Schumer, House Rule 23 would likely do you no good at all. I don't even know what House Rule 23 is offhand. Let's see. I'm just sort of curious. I'll see if I can Google it. Just House of Representatives, House Rule 23. I mean, it may actually have to do with the ethics code and the code of conduct, but it's not that they, did their research and figured out what rules would be implicated here. Yeah, I guess the current, this is the current Rule 23, Code of Official Conduct. So, the ethics rules of the House. But again, it's not like the forgers did their research but just forgot which house Schumer served in. It was that they lifted they took the Conyers complaint and erased basically the Conyers name and put in Chuck Schumer and didn't really read the document and find obvious errors like House Rule 23. And that they probably didn't really even want to bother doing that work because that would require real research. Which Senate rule would be implicated here? It's not. You can't just change House to Senate. House or Senate Rule 23. I don't really even know offhand what that is, but just out of curiosity, I'm wondering. U.S. Senate Rule 23. 22 is where the filibuster procedures and cloture procedures are. Standing Rules of the Senate, number 23. I'm just kind of curious what that might be, just for fun. If they just lifted it, would be privileges of the floor. So that probably wouldn't get you very far in your forgery. Anyway, that's not the real story here. The forged lawsuit came as several lawmakers were, of course, worried about resigning over accusations of sexual misconduct. 3 lawmakers stepped down or announced their resignations last week. Now, the Axios reporting on all this includes the breakdown of sometimes things that are obvious and stupid, but sometimes things that help organize your thoughts. Why it matters? Let's find out why. Why would it matter, do you think? This was an apparent effort to dupe reporters and smear a senator, both symptoms of an amped-up news environment where harassment charges are proliferating and reporters themselves have become targets for fraud. The former staffer told Mike Allen in a phone interview she did not author the document, in addition to which none of the charges ring true, and her signature was forged. That's actually a fairly serious problem. She said she'd never heard of the document before Axios took it to Schumer's office for comment on Tuesday. Matt House, of course, we know, says this was a huge problem. They referred it to the Capitol Police, and that the individual responsible for forging the document should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I would love to find out who that is, and of course, so would prosecutors. Presumably. Who knows? Maybe the Department of Justice under Donald Trump not particularly interested in taking down one of their favorite dirty tricksters. We shall see. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. It's the top of the hour, 1 minute break. One of the few times where I've wished that this break actually went on longer as the voice begins to fade. But we were reading when we left off the Axios, the original report on this, the Axios report, and their breakdown of not only why it matters, but some of the background material, the backstory in this is actually quite important. What they had received, of course, was a password-protected PDF of a 13-page document shopped to Axios and other outlets. The document, dated 2012, has the file name Schumer_complaint. It looks like a lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. One of many red flags, no lawyer for the staffer is named. The woman named in the document was a legislative staffer for Schumer, as mentioned, from 2009 to 2012. She originally went to the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police, but they directed her on questions of jurisdiction to the Capitol Police, and of course Schumer's office went there as well. We have the statement from her about this, but this also interesting, of course, Axios saying they agreed to her stipulation that she not be named because she said she's the victim of a crime. And I think she's entirely right. Now, here's some other interesting stuff. A source close to Schumer said the document is full of errors. And this other red flags here. The document contains an allegation of inappropriate behavior on September 16th, 2011 in Washington. But Schumer was in New York City on that date, and that's one of the amazing things about filing a stupid thing like this. These guys keep their schedules, and they were able to look that up and check that right away. September 16th, where was I? And if the answer's New York, then inappropriate behavior in Washington, D.C. is just a huge mistake. This is bad forging and bad research. It was thrown together, slapped together by idiots who don't know what they're doing. The big question will be, who did they find on the other end of this document? I imagine a password-protected PDF would be pretty relatively easy to identify the author of, or that there would be some sort of fingerprints on it, electronic fingerprints that they could use to eliminate suspects, for instance, but a lot of people are going to get their computers seized on this one, and it's going to be fun. Is it James O'Keefe? Is it Mike Cernovich? Is it Charles the Rage Furby Johnson? They're all in that workspace, so to speak, and all would be suspects. So it would be interesting to see which one, if one alone, is tracked down on this thing. And seizing their computers would be a good place to start. That would be a lot of fun, and I recommend it highly. Anyway, But these are the sorts of things that happen when you are dumb and you forge things. You leave off the lawyer's name. I mean, James O'Keefe sometimes actually does a better job on these things. Like I would have thought if it was an O'Keefe operation, he would put down the name of a fake lawyer along with a phone number and would have set up a phone number in a fake office somewhere and had somebody man the phones in order to answer the call and pretend that they were the lawyer. They might have given the game away with their stupid answers, but that's a little bit more O'Keefe-like. This, I don't know. Cernovich, Johnson, probably somebody like that. Not interested in doing any of the research and probably didn't think about the number of ways that this could have been easily and quickly fact-checked. Like, yes, people like Chuck Schumer, who have a staff who do their scheduling and who keep records, are going to know or be able to find out on a moment's notice what was the senator doing exactly and at what time and where on September 16th, 2011. That never occurred to these guys. There's also an allegation in this piece of inappropriate behavior by Schumer on August 25th, 2011 in Washington. But Schumer, not in New York City at that time. Of course, this was recess time, and if you were not a complete idiot, you might have guessed that he wasn't going to be in Washington on August 25th of any year. He was in France, as a matter of fact, but again, something they know because they keep records and know what they're talking about. The source tells Axios that reporters from the Washington Post, CNN, BuzzFeed, The New Yorker, and ABC all inquired about the document Tuesday, which brings us to another point. When you provide a document like that to real reporters, even though what you're trying to prove is that real reporters are sloppy and biased and they will run a story without checking it just to hurt politicians in general or Republicans in particular, and maybe they thought, the journalistic community will be primed for accepting these allegations if we, A, go after a big fish, so they went after the biggest one they could, like Schumer, or B, they might be feeling the heat that we've been providing for them going after Republicans, and they might be looking for more Democrats to take down in order to look like they're not biased. Maybe this will actually work. But either way, this is of a piece, I think, with the one hoax that it shouldn't be regarded as simply a hoax. It's a crime. But the operation recently run by James O'Keefe to plant fake allegations about Roy Moore in order to, quote unquote, prove that fake allegations are in fact easy to plant in the traditional news media, and therefore you should not believe the previous well-researched ones documented by the Washington Post with regard to Moore, because look how easy it is to fool them, except they found out very quickly it's really not easy to fool them. And again, I will point out that was obvious to us the day we read the first Roy Moore stories. It was so plain from the way it had been written how careful the Washington Post had been, even to the point of anticipating and defusing the various attacks they thought might be coming against the Washington Post for having dared to print this thing, not to mention the obvious attacks against the women coming forward because they would be damaging Roy Moore's chances. But it was perfectly obvious when we read it that the fact that they documented the accuser's financial and marital histories to show, yes, we already know that they will be accused of all sorts of things because they've been married multiple times or they've declared bankruptcy in the past. Not only are those bogus attacks, but we know they're coming. And you think the Washington Post didn't know about that, didn't anticipate that, didn't check on that, wasn't prepared to deal with that? That just goes to show that your idea of how the Washington Post actually works is childish and stupid, James O'Keefe. You don't know what you're talking about. The entire reason for your organization to exist is a false premise. Not to mention the fact that, of course, you're insisting, as Project Veritas, by the way, that you're exposing, we'll expose how rampant fake news really is by faking news, which, of course, does nothing to solve the problem. It only adds to the number of things that are fake news if you believe that the first stuff you were reading was fake news. In fact, of course, you're the only one creating fake news. The entire fake news universe exists thanks to you, some of which you do because it helps you politically, and some of which you do because for some reason you think Democrats or liberal-leaning publications will join in if you offer them something juicy enough. And the initial reporting on the Moore story should have told you, if you had a brain in your head, that wasn't going to happen, and that your story was going to be the subject of extraordinary scrutiny. And you were caught. It was super easy. You know what? You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of all the claims by Republicans of rampant voter fraud by Democrats. And then what ends up happening is the only people ever prosecuted for voter fraud, actual voter fraud, are Republicans. And they're usually Republicans trying to prove how easy it is to perpetrate voter fraud, and they end up getting busted every time. I mean, I suppose it's possible that some of them get by, but they never tell their stories, because if they did, they would then be busted, and then the story wouldn't be good anymore. So anyway, it reminds me a lot of that. And the same thing is happening here. Again, if you had a brain in your head, you would have realized, one, that a document that's a lawsuit that has no lawyer name on it isn't going to be believed. And two, I guess, these guys probably just never anticipated. They don't know where they were on August 25th, 2011. They don't know where he was on September 16th, 2011. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. Nobody's even going to research that. The Washington Post, the CNN, Axios, and others, they don't check that stuff. They won't even think to check it. They'll just print it because it's hot, juicy stuff. And they don't know where the hell they were on those dates, so they figure no one else does either. Projection plays a part in it. Just plain ignorance of how journalism really works plays a part in it. Not to mention ignorance of how a Senate office actually works. Anyway, they conclude by saying, be smart. Look for more hits like this aimed at victimizing both reporters and public figures. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, ordinarily I might say, well, now the jig is up. They've done it twice, and they've been busted twice. I doubt they'll try it again. But remember, we're talking about extraordinarily stupid and extraordinarily vindictive people here who've never really had a healthy serving of comeuppance and justice before. This despite the fact that O'Keefe has been arrested for his antics before. He was never arrested for the one he really should have been arrested for, of course, and that was the victimization of the CNN reporter, or the attempted victimization anyway. But maybe that one will come back to light in the next couple of days. Joan McCarter is ready to join us, and I'm ready to let it happen. So that's good news. Good morning, Joan. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Kagro. I'm losing my voice too.
Oh no, this is a disaster. Wow. Were you at that same restaurant that I was at on Saturday night when the waiter with laryngitis gave me my salad? I think.
Oh no.
I was talking about it this morning. You got to have paid sick leave out there. You're getting people. This is exactly what happens. But yeah, my mind raced back to that last night as I was coming down with this and saying, "Oh God!" I knew right when he did it. Like, why am I eating this salad? I'm an idiot. I must have been really hungry.
You were hungry for salad.
I guess so.
I was. Last night was Grinch night at our favorite bar, our watering hole that all of the Democrats in Boise hang out at, and Grinch night is of course just once a year. Is one of our favorite people who has a wonderful Grinch costume and is a really, really good Grinch. He retells the story, and it's a big party. And it was a bigger party last night, of course, because in the middle of the Grinch story, Doug Jones won the election, and Yes.
That's pretty good. And so
there was a great deal of celebration. It was about as loud as the celebration you were playing earlier.
Yeah, hearts grew 3 sizes that day.
Yes.
I'm surprised that Barb let you go out on election night, but I guess they had the elections
There was
team on
plenty
hand.
of coverage. There was plenty of coverage.
Yeah.
It was a Hanukkah miracle.
Yeah, it really was. And it'll last for considerably longer than the 8 days. And we're willing to take it on that one. That's it was great news, and so that must have been fun. And so you think is it just that you are out having a good time? Nobody gave you any viruses, I hope.
I hope so.
All right.
I hope so.
On blogging, it usually doesn't matter, but of course, for radio, well, that's difficult. I don't want to strain your voice too much. I still have a little bit more left in the tank. So if at any point it becomes uncomfortable, do let us know, and we'll let you take some time and get some tea or chicken soup or what have you. And
sounds like a plan.
Okay. Well, for the moment, if there's any, where do you want to begin or end for that matter? If you really can't make it work, we can also, of course, you can send us your articles via Twitter or email or what have you, and I can gladly read through them for you. But
I did just send one out.
Excellent.
Reminding Mitch McConnell of what happened in January 2010 after a special election, when Democrats had a massive, massive bill about to hit the floor, about to pass. And we just had a special election in Massachusetts.
Right.
Which flipped the seat from Ted Kennedy, the Democrat, to Scott Brown, the Republican. And what did Harry Reid do?
He delayed. I'll help you on this one. Save your voice. Unless you'd like to deliver the punchline on that.
You go ahead.
I don't want to step on your line here, but boy, I can hear you straining. It's that he delayed the vote, and it was the health care vote, is the Affordable Care Act, and he just said, "Listen, the people of Massachusetts have spoken. We're going to set everything aside and wait for the new senator to get here to represent his state," even though he knew right away it was going to cost him his vote. Remember, they were calling him already Senator 41. He's the guy that was going to come in and screw the whole thing up. That was the announced plan. And Harry Reid said, it is what it is. An election was held. We lost it. That sucks. I'm going to wait. I'm going to take my lumps, and we'll finish this thing the best we can later on. Probably no such courtesy forthcoming from Mitch McConnell, I would guess.
Yep.
All right. Well, now there's, so that's the precedent just in terms of waiting. And I was mentioning last night, in the olden days, a situation like this, you might very frequently find Luther Strange would resign immediately, and the governor, Republican though she may be, would appoint the only obvious choice, the guy who was just elected, Doug Jones, to the seat. You'd have to do that because certification process takes some time. I understand from Adam Bonan's tweeting last night that I think there's 10 business days required in the certification process under Alabama law. That means Doug Jones doesn't get his election certificate until December 26th at the earliest, and they would likely be done by that point. And, of course, the Senate can't just say, let's seat the guy. I mean, they can do anything, I suppose. They but typically will not seat the guy without the election certificate showing up, even if there's pressure. The fact that it has happened in the past is usually an engineered happening, like either a incumbent resigning and making room for the newly elected senator. Sometimes they used to do that to give them a boost in seniority, even if it's just a couple of days against anybody else that's incoming. And sometimes it's just, look, this guy's supposed to get to work and start representing people right away. These days, of course, there'll be no such courtesy, and they want to keep the Democratic vote out for as long as possible. And they'll do anything they can to do it.
Of course. Where we have to, I mean, Mitch McConnell's not going to do the right thing. It's Mitch McConnell.
Right.
He doesn't do the right thing. He does the expedient thing.
Yes.
But we've got several senators who have been bleeding about principle now for months.
Yes.
We've got Susan Collins. We've got Jeff Flake. We have Ben Sass. We have Marco Rubio. We have less convincingly Lindsey Graham.
Yes. Less convincing every day.
Yes. And by the way, what does Trump have on him anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Very strange. But what we can do is continue to put pressure on all of those guys on this bill.
Yeah, that's true. And between the reconsideration that Susan Collins ought to be giving the bill anyway, and the pressure to do so, and the fact that a new vote is coming that will change the formula, I hope somebody will break. Maybe some of the people who voted for it despite misgivings about Trump, but who are retiring in the near future, or some other motivation. I can hope against hope. I suppose if we can win in Alabama, you can hope against hope in the United States Senate too, with so many people retiring after this year.
Yes. And, they could go out on a high note for once and do the right thing. Even John McCain.
Yeah. That's true. The opportunity exists.
I think he's given in, but it's hard to say.
Well, yeah, it's hard to read him on things like that. We will see how this one works out. I do see also calls for seating him immediately. I mean, everyone would like him to be seated immediately, but there are some procedural problems with that. Though I did watch with some amusement people saying, well, McConnell can do this, and even when the certificate arrives, even if it were to arrive, sooner than they expected, he could still simply not take up the matter of seating him and finish the tax bill and whatever else he wanted to work on before they got to the ministerial business of swearing him in, which of course made me laugh and say, wow, that was a crazy idea a few months ago when I said, maybe we ought to try something like that. And it really was officially a big deal if you either didn't take up the examination of election certificates or swear people in. Now, of course, it all hinges on that, and Mitch McConnell can do anything, and it's okay.
And Mitch McConnell will do anything. But the other part of this is this tax bill keeps getting worse and worse and worse. They're not fixing things in conference. They're having more problems. They decided that because rich people in New York will be hit particularly hard, and some of those rich people called Donald Trump and say, hey, what are you doing? That they've had to give more tax cuts to more rich people.
What was missing for them?
It was the state and local tax deduction.
Oh.
That particularly hits blue states hard.
Yeah. A lot of millionaires live there.
Making over $1 million. They decided to leave the people making over $1 million. They left their tax bracket the same.
Okay.
Lowered it for people from 400,000 to $1 million. Those are the people that were getting the bigger breaks. And now they've decided that they have to give the millionaires their tax cut too.
That's pretty
because
amazing.
They're losing state and local income tax deductions. So
I remember back in the days when people like Rush Limbaugh, who are, for instance, there's a millionaire who lives in a blue state, and he was insisting that he was going to leave those states, or even at some point he was insisting he was going to leave America because of the Affordable Care Act. That never came to pass. But he was always threatening to leave New York. It's a high-tax state, and I should move to it. And he never did. So I don't know what held the attraction for him in New York. You can build a radio studio anywhere. But I don't know. Restaurants? Easy access to OxyContin? I don't know. I mean, that's a rural problem, too. Right? We keep reading about that. So it must be the restaurants. I don't know. Applebee's and OxyContin? I don't think so. Okay.
I don't want to think about the restaurants in New York.
Yes.
Sorry, got distracted there. I read the story about the spotted pig yesterday and all of the horrible things that happened there. And on the other front, on the other big story that we've been living with for the past few weeks.
Yeah. Okay. The is that the restaurant? Was it one of the celebrity chefs who's been accused? Is that what we're talking about?
It's not a celebrity chef. It's a restaurant tour, but the celebrity chef is April Bloomfield, a woman who is under some scrutiny too for knowing that all of this stuff was going on.
I see.
Under her, at any rate,
hard to keep track of
back
it all.
to Mitch McConnell and Republicans,
Yes.
and making this bill even worse. It was these people calling Donald Trump and saying, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing to my taxes?"
That
is at this new wrinkle. So we're going to have possibly the problem of the parliamentarian again. Because so far it looks just like they're figuring out ways to make the bill more expensive.
Yeah, are they going to exceed their ceiling?
It's the corporate alternative minimum tax thing.
Right.
That's going to cost money. Now they've fixed this tax cuts for rich people thing. There's more money. And there's another new fight too. Between lobbyists for Wall Street Journal has this story and it's sort of lovely. Between construction equipment dealers and farm equipment dealers.
Okay.
Who the construction equipment dealers don't want a cap on the limiting of their deductions of interest expenses because it comes with strings that apparently the farm equipment dealers are okay with. So you've got bulldozers versus tractors now happening in the conference committee. Just all of this insane stuff because so much of this was written by lobbyists. Inserted in at the very last minute without Congress really even looking at it to see what they were writing. And now it's lobbyists versus lobbyists, tractors versus bulldozers.
I mean, that can happen, but another good reason to follow regular procedure, regular order. You have a markup, and let's say the farm equipment people are the first out of the gate on that, and they'll bring it up. They won't write an amendment for the construction equipment industry, but once it's considered, people are watching. They're talking about it. They're debating it and voting on it, and someone will say, "Hey, this needs to be consistent between these two industries."
This is a problem. Yeah. This treats us differently.
Yeah, if it's just drop whatever tax breaks you want in our suggestion box, and we'll stick them in there, and nobody gets to see it until it comes to the floor. You have things like this. Picking winners and losers, they sometimes call it.
Sometimes they do, yes.
That is a weird one.
And, it's going to end up, of course, because as Republicans, the losers are going to end up being us.
Well, yeah, usually.
Because they've got to, and this is mind-boggling as well, they've got to stay under the 1.5 trillion deficit number.
Yeah. That's a pretty generous number, and they're having trouble with it.
That's a good number. That's a big number. They're having a hard time coming in under it, which is sort of remarkable.
Yeah. Well,
then you've got Rand Paul saying there's absolutely no way I can vote for this short-term spending bill because it spends so much money. We can't do that to the deficit.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Well, however, you can do 10 times more over a decade. I suppose that's no problem for him.
Oh, because that's growth.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. They don't believe in that stuff. And of course, tax cuts pay for themselves, et cetera, et cetera. I guess not surprising that would come up again. All right. We are up against our first break. Are you, you are entirely excused from continuing if you're really struggling. If you have some more you want to add after the break, by all means, hang around. But otherwise, thank you for working so hard. Oh my gosh! See, this is a dedicated Daily Kos editor here, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll be back then after this 2-minute break, which will be a great time to grab some water and rejuvenate. We'll be right back. We're back on here. We might as well just go and discuss it. That's fine. We were so excited about having seen the Omarosa story developing as we spoke during our break. So April Ryan says that she was escorted out with some drama. Is that what happened?
Some drama. Imagine there being drama with a reality show star.
Escorted out. I mean, I don't know. Maybe everybody gets escorted out of the White House, but who knows? But not with this kind of drama. So, any idea? Have you seen anything? I mean, you're probably just coming to the story the way I am.
I can't wait to see it.
I know that's going to be an exciting thing. I had mentioned to you during the break, and I guess I'll tell everybody else. I've been holding that there's Omarosa stories out there I wasn't holding them intentionally. It was just not a seriously important thing to get to, but she's a very strange person, but was really weirdly abusing her position there, which nobody knew what it was, by the way. Does anybody have any idea what Omarosa was doing there besides being, a joke, essentially? Like, I mean, they're all jokes, obviously, at whatever they do, but I mean, when I say it's a joke, it was like, when he got elected, people said, he'll probably bring Omarosa into the White House. And then he did.
And he did.
And she didn't have anything to do. So apparently she spent all of her time planning and then executing her bachelorette party at the White House. Like,
and yes.
Inviting all her friends over.
The photo crew.
Yeah.
Having not cleared this with anybody at the White House.
Because I'm Omarosa, and I'm famous from TV, and Mr. Trump knows me. Don't worry about it.
Well, according to Sarah Sanders, who released a statement, she's leaving as of January 20th.
She wants to make a year.
Which makes it a year, which means she gets whatever she gets.
Okay.
There's a monetary thing, isn't there, for people who last a year?
Maybe.
Kind of.
Makes it sound like it. Or maybe she just thought it would be neat to go a year, but we'll see. Bill in Portland, Maine, mentioning, he says, I believe this makes 24 senior administration officials who have left the White House because Trump only hires the very best people, believe me. And there's a lot of people out the door. I mean, there's usually high turnover. It's a stressful job, but when you just bring idiots in and then lose on everything and destroy every issue you touch, and then Trump blows up at you and throws television remotes at you and screams at you. I guess you try to find your way out here. But yeah, Omarosa is trying to push this as her decision and a resignation. But I don't know about that. Getting escorted out doesn't sound like the way this usually goes.
No, I can't wait for this story to come out. You know it will. These are dishy people.
Good. Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a lot of people in the White House who can't wait to go off the record with somebody about exactly what it was that Omarosa did to get fired.
Yeah, she's not going to have a whole lot of pull inside the White House to keep people from leaking it before January 20th. A lame duck Omarosa? Come on. That's really amazing. I said that.
I wonder if they have to change all the locks. Maybe they just take her keys away.
Maybe. I mean, they got armed guards. I think it should be pretty safe, but I don't know. I'd love to find out exactly what it was. Where were we? There was another thing we were talking about that was more serious. Ah, yes. Cory Gardner.
Cory Gardner, who is head of the NRSC.
Is he? Okay.
The Senate committee, right?
Yeah, that's the committee. I don't know. I don't keep up on
Republican from Colorado who says that Doug Jones needs to follow the will of the people of Alabama and serve as a Republican.
Okay. I am sure they just had an election and they decided as between the two of them, Republicans and Democrats, that is, which one should go to the Senate. They chose the Democrat Cory Gardner, though, concludes they meant to choose the Republican.
They meant to choose the Republican because, the Republican that was actually on the ballot had that big asterisk by his name. The one that said, goes after teenage girls.
Right.
So, really, he would have, if it hadn't been for the teenage girl thing, then they would be sending a Republican to the Senate. So Doug Jones had better go as a Republican.
Sure. Or date teenage girls. But I prefer that he just serve as a Democrat.
And I think Doug Jones is not really interested in doing that.
Yeah, I hope not.
If you heard his speech last night, and this just warmed the cockles of my heart. He said, take this election from the great state of Alabama, take this opportunity to find common ground and go ahead and fund that CHIP program.
Yeah.
Do it before I get there. And I am just so gratified that CHIP was featured on a national stage last night.
Yeah, people are watching and understand that this needs to be done. And in other words, you've not only elected not the pedophile, Alabama, but the guy who was actually prepared to go and serve as a senator and knows what the issues are and what needs to be taken care of, as opposed to, and I'm going to make everybody recite the 10 commandments every morning and, and throw out all the Muslims. He has a real agenda.
We're going to take care of the kids, is what he said. We're going to take care of the kids.
Good.
That's after, of course, Jimmy Kimmel probably did a better job of putting Chip on the national stage last night because it's Jimmy. Night before last, rather.
Well,
it's Jimmy Kimmel, and he kind of has a voice now.
He's got a way. Oh, not like us.
Not like us.
He'd cancel his
show. It's encouraging to me that finally, 74 days into this, everybody's talking about Chip.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean Republicans are going to fund it. In fact, Ryan is talking about putting off dealing with it at all until January and scraping together what money they can find to try to keep sending to states that are in real difficulties. But that doesn't really help the states because it's still a tremendous amount of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And they don't know, for some states, if there isn't the authorization from the federal government, they're not sure that they can even statutorily, under their state constitutions, keep the program running.
That is, it's problematic and it's not even probably outside of the Republican design. They probably know that very well.
They do, I'm sure.
Ugh. Well, I'm glad it was encouraging. Then I didn't get to sit and listen to the speech, but I saw right away everybody mentioning that Chip got a call out in the victory speech. So that is encouraging. Versus, for instance, I don't know if you happened to see the interview Jake Tapper did with the Moore spokesperson. I don't know whether it was last night or the night before. Probably the night before, about how you are sworn in on a Bible. Did you happen to catch that one?
Yes. Yes.
Roy Moore probably shouldn't have gotten as far in the legal profession as he did. They probably should not have allowed that. But I mean, it wasn't Roy Moore making the statement, but this spokesperson was speaking for him and explaining Moore's position on why.
Was it one of his lawyers?
It may have been a lawyer. I don't know who the guy was.
It was the Jewish one.
But it wasn't that one. I can tell you that. But the exchange was remarkable, in which he's explaining why Moore believes that Muslims should not be allowed to serve in the United States Congress. And, the real answer, I mean, maybe that isn't really why Moore thinks it. It's just the answer. Because the real answer is Roy Moore hates Muslims. And that's why he thinks they shouldn't be able to serve. He doesn't want them near him. And he believes they're, evil because he's read dumb fake news about Muslims. So, but he needs a legal reason. And his actual explanation was, because when you're sworn into office in the United States, you swear on a Christian Bible, and they're not Christians, so they can't really swear on one. It it wouldn't be ethical for them, and you wouldn't be able to take them at their word because they're not swearing on their holy book. They're swearing on a Christian Bible, so they don't really care, was the implication, to tell the truth. And so that's why you can't have it. Now, that does not answer the question of, well, why then are Jewish, like your Jew attorney, as you say, your Jew lawyer. Why?
Would he not be able to serve in Congress?
Right. And
No.
Jake Tapper tells the guy, you can be sworn in on pretty much anything that you hold sacred. It doesn't have to be a Christian Bible. The guy argues with him. I'm an elected official. I've been sworn in 3 times. Every time I use the Christian Bible. Like, that's not because that's what the law says. It's because that's what you chose.
Because you're a Christian.
Right, yeah. And the guy falls silent and he just sits there. And then his best response is,
With his mouth open.
yeah, I could put a Bible in that mouth. And then he says, well, when we made Donald Trump president, he used a Christian Bible. Yeah, because he's Christian, you dummy. What's wrong with you? I wonder whether this guy was a lawyer. He's an elected official, though. That's something that you'll need to remedy next, Alabama. I thought that was rather remarkable. A little bit of a distraction from, the various other things, like Omarosa having her bridal shower in the White House and then getting fired.
We've got more on that for Maple Ryan.
Oh, yeah?
Sources say General Kelly did the firing.
Oh.
And Omarosa is alleged to have acted very vulgar and cursed a lot and said she helped elect President Trump. The word is a General Kelly had it and got rid of her.
Well, I'm sure she helped, but, a lot of people there did. And the White House is full of people who helped elect Donald Trump. That's why they're there. And, I hope there's tapes. Lordy, I hope there's tapes of her. That would be fantastic. Well,
yes.
That firing's going to stick. Trump sent him, you're right. We got to fire her. You do it.
We've got a second source saying, I don't know how you pronounce the first name. Yamishi Alcindor, who reports for New York Times.
Okay.
I don't know how she pronounces her first name because she's print. So
yes, right.
She just talked to sources who told me Omarosa was let go yesterday and that she was escorted off the White House grounds by security.
Man.
They say she is now calling friends saying she left voluntarily because her year anniversary was coming up. Mm. There's her severance package. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess they'll probably leave. I don't think, it sounds like they may leave her on the payroll until January 20th somehow to
I don't
save
think
face.
She's coming back.
Yeah,
into the
she's not getting back
White
into
House.
the building. You get escorted out by security. You know what? You're going to put you in a corner, and when you calm down, we'll let you back into the White House. No way. I mean, maybe in this administration that happens, and it might happen to the president. I don't know, but nobody else certainly would get that courtesy, and that doesn't sound very good. But, she's a big star. She'll go get a job somewhere else or something. I don't know. She'll be on Fox News.
I just hope she
maybe
blabs.
CNN.
I just hope she leaves there and blabs.
That would be great. I think she began her, her political awareness as a Democrat, and she just, she became a Trump fan because of the show and then stuck with him, and that was sort of logical. It'll be interesting to see if she, snaps out of it or something. Although I don't know how far you can trust her, but what the hell? I'd love to hear stories and let them dispute him. Have that fight. I don't mind.
Yeah.
So
anyway, so that's kind of another fun little thing for today.
Yeah.
Today's turning out to be not so horrible.
Yeah, right. It's so far so good. They're probably doing things in Congress that suck, but that's always true.
They're always doing things in Congress that suck, like pushing through this tax bill, which I think we can really fight now. I really do think we've got more leverage to pressure Susan Collins and even potentially Jeff Flake. I don't know if you saw last week, at the end of the week, the tweets of his discussion on the plane with A.D. Barkin.
I did the videos. He videotaped himself discussing the issues with him. I like the title too, Flakes on a Plane. That was nice.
Flakes on a Plane. A.D. Barkin has ALS. He was diagnosed with ALS out of nowhere last year. And very soon, in order to still live, he's going to require a ventilator. Yeah. And he's not at all sure that he's going to be able to keep that ventilator after the cuts that this bill will require on disability payments and on Medicare.
Right.
The sequester cuts. And Jeff Flake stood there on the plane saying, oh, we have the assurance of Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan that they're not going to let those cuts go forward. He's lying to him.
Yeah.
Because Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are lying. Because what's Paul Ryan talking about? The minute that this tax bill is done, they're going to start cutting Medicare, Medicaid.
Yeah, they were actually pretty open about that, surprisingly, and somehow it didn't get all that much attention. I mean, it did get some, that's how we know it, but not enough. And that'll be the next thing. And I guess we have to concentrate on one major topic at a time. But yeah, they're quite open about this, and this was the bill was pretty much designed to trigger things in previously existing budget control measures that would insist on these cuts. And I guess the grain of truth, if we're looking really, really hard for it, why would Mitch McConnell or Paul Ryan even hint at those cuts not going through? I guess it's pretty much the same. Am I right here? The same logic. The same logic that they once used to say, well, no, nobody will let the sequesters go through because everybody's against it. And between that and the doc fix, and these are things we'll all come back to and punt and kick the can down the road and delay it because they'd be super unpopular. But they keep missing the can.
But they didn't get entirely delayed, as we know with Medicare.
Right.
And then this is something that Jeff Flake absolutely said to A.D. Barkin that was a lie. He said they didn't let those cuts go through in 2013 before. But there were Medicare cuts because Part B, the part that provides things like chemotherapy and things probably like respirators, was cut. And the clinics providing those services, the clinics needing to get those drugs and those devices, couldn't afford them. People lost critical life-saving care. Chemo patients were kicked out because the clinics couldn't afford to continue to treat them because of the sequester in Medicare.
Yeah.
This has happened before.
Yeah, so it's an established pattern, and it's hard to keep up with this stuff, even if you're a relatively well-informed or a fantastically informed person.
If you're a senator, you should be keeping up.
Yes, that's true. And what he's likely doing is, all politicians to some extent use this trick, some consciously, some not so much. But essentially, if you blather enough about procedure and you sound like you know what you're talking about, or you say, well, you remember that time in 2013 where da-da-da, and make up whatever you need to escape the conversation. And most constituents say, and it might strike them as untrue, but they're unable to say, I'm not a walking database. You can't just call these things up. Although in the age of Google and smartphones, you can't do it on a plane, no.
Yeah.
But
and A.D. Barkin, however, is an advocate, and he does know this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was he able to call him on it right on the spot?
He didn't. He remained polite.
Yeah, that's another
left it to us to call him on it
issue
afterwards.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's a lobbyist. He needs to continue to have a relationship with Flake.
Okay.
Because he also lives in Arizona. But he put that tape out there for the rest of us to use.
Yeah. Well, it's not always easy. Even if he was aware of it, it's not always easy to work that into conversation. If you're not aware, you can certainly be excused. Even if you're a lobbyist, you can't remember every single vote, although that's a pretty obvious one, I guess. But we find that all the time. And if you ever happen to if you're lucky enough to corner your senator, either on a plane or anywhere else, they very frequently will try to escape with things like that. We certainly found that to be the case. We find that to be the case in everything.
Yes.
But filibuster reform for many years, it doesn't really work that way. It does. I'll tell you why. But yeah, that's like a senator's trick. They can't, afford to spend 2 hours discussing with everybody. But I suppose, one, if you're stuck on a plane, and two, you're a lobbyist, you're going to get a lot more opportunity to discuss it. So it was very valuable stuff, and we know where there are fault lines now, and can continue to press him on this stuff and say, yeah, we found out, we know, we learned we know what your trick is now, and your escape hatch doesn't work either. So what are you going to do about it? Well, we do have that task ahead of us.
We have
Anything
a big task ahead of us. We have a second big task ahead of us.
And
I'm having a hard time talking now.
Yes, I can hear it. That's fine. We can wrap it up, and you can get back to
We've
rest.
got net neutrality, and we have the first wedge.
Yes.
From a Republican.
Oh, okay.
Colorado's Mike Kaufman is the first Republican U.S. representative to ask the FCC to delay the vote on net neutrality.
Good, at last. They used to be so active.
They used to be so active, but there we've got a tiny, tiny bit of a wedge, perhaps.
Yeah. Sure. I mean,
we need to exploit that. It's, we've seen the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people whose identities were essentially stolen to make comments to the FCC, including Patrick Leahy, the senator from Vermont, who is extremely supportive of net neutrality, has had hearings in support of net neutrality, sent an anti-net neutrality comment to the FCC.
That's pretty awesome. Are we sure that wasn't, planted so that people would see how ridiculous it is? Like putting Ted Kennedy on the no-fly list.
Right.
That's amazing. Well, that's something else that needs investigation and could potentially slow this thing down. I am surprised at the number of fronts in which these impossible fights are coming out, not just Alabama, the impossible fight of how can we possibly defeat Affordable Care Act repeal? How could we possibly defeat this tax bill and, get inching closer and closer and closer? But it's not a done deal. So can we still do it? You have to believe so. And have to keep working to make sure, and net neutrality on top of it all. It's amazing what organization can do, and I guess can't be taught that lesson enough times.
It can't be.
So yes, thank you for bringing that one up.
Keep calling on everything.
Yes, until you sound like us.
Oh, and you have until Friday to sign up for Obamacare.
Okay. Yes. Good. And it sounds like
tell everybody you know who needs health insurance that they have until Friday.
Until Friday.
Through Friday, I should say.
Through Friday. Okay. So up to midnight or 11:59 or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I sign up if it's still 11:59 in Hawaii, but I'm in New York, or does it go by time zone?
Well, in previous administrations, yes.
Yeah.
The previous administration, I should say, since there's only been one previous that's had the ACA. Yes, you can.
Do we know if they'll do the same thing? Because I recall that they did that, and I thought that was remarkable. But is it waivable now?
We don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Take care of it before 11:59 wherever you live. That's the best bet. There's no reason to gamble with this. Don't put anything past
these guys. And previously, and I think that they'll probably still do it this way, if you had signed in and you had it in the works, it didn't have to actually be purchased. If it was in the works by midnight Friday, you were in.
Yeah. Don't play any games. I mean, I'm not daring anybody to see what you can get away with, but
try to get it done by say noon, just to be on the safe side.
Sure, the other 12, as we like to call it. Okay, well, that's a great reminder, and would be I'd like to deal another defeat to Donald Trump, and any front on which we can do it. Why not have a super week? Sign up for Obamacare, defeat Roy Moore in Alabama, maybe sink the tax bill, and put all your weight behind the one Republican wedge we've been given on net neutrality. Those are some pretty
Absolutely.
good marching orders.
Finish this year outright and do it for Doug Jones.
Yeah, why not? He's done this for you. Pay him back.
And the people of Alabama who made this happen.
Yeah. We're happy. We're glad to see it. I was holding out hope that Alabama would put their best foot forward yesterday, and they did, and they kicked Roy Moore with it too while they were doing so. So a double bonus for us. Thanks, Joan. Thanks for hanging in there with the voice fading. It sounds like you lost it in a better way than I did.
I did.
At your Grinch party. So take it easy. Hope the voice comes back soon, even though you too are in print mostly. And,
I hope so as well. Life's easier if you can talk.
That's true. All right. Thanks again. Thanks for hanging in there. I know you must have been excited to give us all this good news today.
I was very excited.
Thanks for doing it. Take care. Hope we're in better shape next week, you and I.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
Take it easy, and we'll check in with you again. Thanks again.
Alrighty.
Joan McCarter, our senior political writer, off to recovery at this point. And by the way, I've always had that theory that hard drink will kill the germs down there. So you might give that a try as well.
I'll give it a shot.
I think I've got the voice. What I have left of it, I have today because thanks to Catoctin Creek organic rye, made here in Virginia.
I'll go find some.
Yeah, if you can't, we'll ship it to you.
Talk to you next week.
Okay. I've got one more story to jam in here before we wrap things up for the day. I just thought this one was funny, and this one's appropriately short. The Trump family is a family of morons. I don't know if you knew this, but it turns out that not a one of them knows how to vote, and that's pretty good. I'm glad that they don't know how to vote and they don't know what they're doing. But this story is really pretty incredible. And, let's see. I think the Daily News has the nail in the coffin, as it were, on this thing. Not a single member of, or I guess the immediate Trump family, was able to cast a valid ballot in the recent New York City mayoral elections that happened in November. And they thought they might have gotten one in properly, but it didn't turn out. Anyway, it says, good thing last month's mayoral election wasn't close, because if New Yorkers needed the Trump family to decide the outcome, they would have been out of luck. President Trump and his family of New Yorkers were not in the Big Apple on November 7th when voters went to the polls, so they voted by absentee ballot. That much you likely would have guessed, or at least they tried to. Officials at the city's Board of Elections said the president signed and dated an absentee ballot along with an application on October 19th, checking a box that said he would be absent from the city on Election Day. First Lady Melania Trump did the same, submitting a handwritten form that had everything in capital letters, but the First Lady did not sign the envelope that she put the ballot in as required by the Board of Elections, so her vote wasn't counted. If any information is missing, it is invalid, a Board of Elections official said. The directions tell voters to sign the envelope. We also had some other problems as Trump's daughter Ivanka also botched her ballot. She filled it out correctly, but she didn't mail it until Election Day, too late to be counted, so she didn't get to vote either. Jared Kushner, her husband, didn't mail his back at all, so he didn't do it incorrectly. He did do it incorrectly in that he was supposed to do it and he didn't do it, but whatever. And then they thought Trump's was okay, but and it was signed and it was properly filled out and it was returned on time, and then they noticed the president's birthday is actually June 14th, 1946, but his ballot application lists his birthday as July 14th, 1946. You got to show me the birth certificate on that one. I don't believe it. Maybe we should throw him out of office. Maybe that's it. We now have to become birthers, and I demand to see the long-form birth certificate that'll tell us what day he was really born. And it was pointed out right here in the Daily News, and guess what? They ended up having to throw his ballot out, too. Melania couldn't get it done. Donald couldn't get it done. Ivanka couldn't get it done. Jared couldn't get it done. Amazing. I don't know how the other kids did, but, I hope they were just as bad at it. Amazing how stupid these guys really are. I'm going to use the short period after this announcement to tell you what's coming up next.
Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Lots coming up. Here's what we missed that Justice is going to pick up on the following show. Let's see. We've got, even the Republican senator who masterminded the plot to steal Merrick Garland's Supreme Court seat now thinks Trump's judicial picks are too extreme. That's Chuck Grassley. We'll hear more about that on Justice program next.